April 16, 1945 at 07:27 hours, Radar Picket Station 1 was situated 30 miles northwest of Okinawa. Quartermaster Second Class Aristides Fortried had just finished logging the USS Laffy's radar operator's report of an approaching contact from the north, now within 12 miles and traveling at 180 knots at an altitude of 4,000 feet. The 19-year-old son of a Seattle-based Greek Orthodox pastor grabbed for his sound-powered telephone as general quarters were imminent. What Fortried was unaware of was that this solitary blip on the radar screen would set off the most formidable kamikaze assault ever directed at American warship. Over the next 18 minutes, USS Laffy would be confronted with 22 Japanese aircraft in a relentless attack that even naval historians found difficult to comprehend as it unfolded. Operation Kikusui, named after the 14th century samurai Kazunokami Masashige, who chose death over surrender, was an Imperial Japanese Navy initiative mobilizing over 3,000 suicide aircraft against the American fleet near Okinawa. 7 major Kikusui operations had already been launched, damaging hundreds of US ships and sinking dozens. However, no vessel would face a more intense assault than what lay ahead for USS Laffy. Cutting through Pacific swells at 25 knots, the ship's hull displaced 200 tons of seawater. From the bridge, Commander Frederick Julian Beckton scrutinized the tactical plot. Aboard was a crew of 336 men equipped with an arsenal tailored for anti-aircraft warfare 6.5-inch dual-purpose guns in 3 twin mounts, 12 40mm bow, mounted anti-aircraft cannons and 11 20mm Alicon cannons. The grim arithmetic of survival was stark. Individual aircraft assaults managed kill rates under 2% against well-guarded destroyers, while mass kamikaze attacks had boosted this to 18.6%. The situation facing Laffy defied all statistical predictions. Beckton had first-hand experience with such tactics. As executive officer on the USS Aaron Ward, he witnessed its destruction at Guadalcanal in November 1942 when it engaged a Japanese battleship from 20 feet away before being obliterated by 14-inch shells. 5 months later, as commander of Aaron Ward, Beckton saw his vessel succumb to Japanese dive bombers. The Navy's choice to place him at the helm of Laffy seemed either ironic or foreboding. Under his rigorous training regimen, the crew had achieved gunnery scores among the highest in the Pacific Fleet, which they would soon need every bit of. Aboard the approaching ID-3A Val dive bomber, the pilot verified his fuel levels and bomb release mechanism. The 750 kg bomb below his fuselage was armed. His official mission was reconnaissance to scout American defenses and report ship positions. However, like countless other kamikaze volunteers, he had composed farewell letters, consumed ceremonial sake, and donned his Hakimaki headband bearing the rising sun emblem. There would be no return flight to deliver intelligence. This would be a one-way mission. American radar operators monitored the Val as it circled at 8,000 yards just beyond effective gun range. In the Combat Information Center below deck, Lieutenant Lloyd Hall kept track of the ship's sophisticated SK air search and SG surface search radar systems. These electronic eyes could detect aircraft up to 60 miles away and surface contacts within 22 miles. However, there were limitations to the technology available at the time. Low-flying planes could easily evade radar detection. The sheer volume of simultaneous attacks could overwhelm operators' capacity to track individual targets effectively. Additionally, the Japanese had devised a tactic involving high-altitude decoys that successfully drew off fighter cover, allowing low-level attackers to strike with devastating results. At ISO 730, Val aircraft commenced their approach run. Mount 51, equipped with a 5-inch gun, swung into position to track the incoming target. Gunner's mate Lawrence Dowski and his team had practiced extensively until they could load, aim, and fire in under 3 seconds. The mount's radar, directed Mark 37 fire control system continuously calculated range, speed, bearing, altitude, wind factors, ship movement, and barrel wear, ensuring precision firing capabilities. This mechanical marvel solved ballistic equations that would have taken human gunners minutes to resolve manually. Despite this sophisticated technology, at such a close range, hitting a maneuvering aircraft traveling over 200 miles per hour relied heavily on both skill and luck. By 0744, the Val had turned away without launching an attack. Whether it was a reconnaissance mission or if the pilot simply lost courage remains unclear. Nevertheless, new radar contacts were already appearing, indicating the arrival of additional aircraft groups. Vice Admiral Meita Jugaki, commanding the 5th Air Fleet from Kyushu, authorized the deployment of more than 350 planes for Kikusui No. 3. Pilots had been briefed on their primary objectives: to eliminate radar Picket destroyers that provided early warning to the main fleet, thereby leaving the carriers vulnerable. Given its strategic importance as a radar station, Laffy was identified as the prime target. At 0827, Laffy's radar detected multiple formations of aircraft approaching from both the north and northwest, estimated at over 50 contacts. Commander Beckton promptly requested fighter support from the Combat Air Patrol. 4 F-6F Hellcats and 2 F-4U Corsairs were dispatched to intercept the approaching raid, but with a distance of 12 miles, they would require several critical minutes to arrive on scene. The pair of aircraft, assigned specifically to protect Laffy, had lost radio contact and could not be located. Consequently, the destroyer was left to fend off the initial onslaught unaided. The first wave comprised 4 Ich-30A Vol bombers flying in a meticulously coordinated formation intended to saturate the ship's defenses. 2 planes would strike from the bow, compelling the vessel to alter course, thereby exposing its beam to the remaining 2 attackers coming in from astern. This strategy had been honed over 3 years of combat in the Pacific theater, evolving through the experiences and sacrifices of countless pilots who identified what tactics were effective and which were not. Their insights, conveyed back to training centers before their final missions, continually refined the doctrine of suicide attack techniques. At 0830 hours, the 4 Vals divided into 2 pairs and initiated their assault runs. Beckton ordered full speed ahead and a sharp left turn to evade the attackers. The ship responded with a sudden hard lean, its hull straining under the strain of this urgent maneuver. While this tactic increased the number of guns facing the enemy planes and narrowed the ship's profile as a target, it also committed the vessel to a predictable course for several crucial seconds. Mounts 51 and 52, situated in the forward section with their 5-inch turrets, commenced firing first. The distinctive thunderous sound of the 5-inch 38 caliber guns reverberated across the water. Each projectile was equipped with a time delay fuse designed to explode at a predetermined distance, generating a lethal cloud of shrapnel meant to shred aircraft and incapacitate pilots. Precise timing was crucial. If detonation occurred too early or too late, the shells would miss their mark. Fire Controlman Second Class Glenn Rodder monitored the approaching Val from his rangefinder position as it closed in from the starboard bow at a range of 2,000 yards. At this point, the 14M guns joined the fray, adding to the barrage of defensive fire. The Swedish-designed Bofors cannons fired 2-pound explosive shells at a rate of 120 rounds per minute. The distinctive sound of the 40 mm pom-poms mixed with the thunderous boom of the 5-inch guns, creating an overwhelming noise that necessitated communication between gun crews using hand signals. At 1,000 yards, the Swiss-designed 20 mm Alicons opened fire, capable of discharging up to 450 rounds per minute and forming a virtual wall of lead and tracer bullets. Gunner's mate Warren Walker, stationed at his 20 mm mount, observed his tracers arching toward an incoming Val dive bomber. Despite its speed exceeding 200 mm, the aircraft appeared to hover in place as it grew larger with terrifying slowness. Walker could clearly see the pilot's face and the rising sun emblems on the wings. The bomb suspended below the fuselage was also visible. The first Val shuddered from multiple hits by the 40 mm shells. Fragments of aluminum skin and engine cowling were flung off as the port wing detached at the root, sending the aircraft cartwheeling into the sea 400 yards to starboard, where its bomb exploded on impact, causing a geyser of spray that drenched Laffy's forward guns. 1 down. The second Val, approaching from the port bow, entered a storm of concentrated fire from Mount 52. A direct hit by a 5-inch shell beneath the aircraft caused shrapnel to shred the fuselage and kill the pilot instantly. The Val nosed over and crashed into the water 300 yards to port. 2 down. The third Val, attacking from astern, released its bomb at 500 yards but was hit by multiple 20mm rounds and burst into flames. Its bomb splashed harmlessly into the sea 50 yards after the burning aircraft crashed into Laffy's wake. 3 down, the fourth Val fell prey to the mistake of maintaining a constant angle and altitude, simplifying fire control calculations for Mount 53, the after 5-inch turret under Chief Gunner's mate Wayne Schaffer. This turret fired 3 shells at 800 yards, causing the aircraft to disintegrate mid-air and scatter debris across the ocean surface. Within just 3 minutes, 4 planes had been destroyed. In the Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Hull marked these kills on his plotting board, but the radar scope revealed no respite. Additional enemy aircraft were closing in, exacerbating the tactical situation. The 8-plane high-cover escort had been lured away by a group of Japanese fighters, leaving Laffy vulnerable. Meanwhile, the 2-plane low-cap remained out of radio contact. For the next critical minutes, the destroyer would have to rely solely on her own guns. At Zoendron 39, the main body of the attack force arrived, unlike the initial waves that launched a coordinated assault. These aircraft approached in rapid succession from multiple directions, rendering it impossible for the ship's fire control systems to engage all targets effectively. This tactic was meticulously designed through analysis of American anti-aircraft procedures and aimed at overwhelming human decision-making capacity. Each gun director could only track one target at a time, while manual mounts required precious seconds to reorient towards new targets. Ammunition handlers could maintain maximum rates of fire for limited durations before becoming exhausted. The fifth attacker, a Yokosuka D4Y Judy dive bomber, approached from deadhead at waver-top height below the depression limits of the 5-inch guns. Beckton ordered emergency flank speed and hard right rudder to expose his aft batteries. Forward 20mm gunners fired desperately at the incoming aircraft, their tracer rounds weaving a lethal web across the sky. Despite taking multiple hits, the duty pilot held course, pressing forward unservingly. At 100 yards, the pilot abruptly pulled up, aiming to crash into the bridge. From his position on the bridge wing, Quartermaster Fuchs observed as the Judy's propeller nearly filled his entire view. Just moments later, the plane stalled, and whether due to battle damage or a mistake by the pilot remains unknown. The aircraft's wing hit the port-yard arm, causing it to spin around before crashing into the water 20 yards away. Its explosion splashed burning fuel and debris onto the bridge, where Fuchs felt the heat as he pressed himself against the bulkhead. Before the crew could regain their composure, a sixth attacker appeared out of nowhere. A Judy approached from the starboard quarter at an angle that concealed it from most of the ship's guns. Only Mount 53 and the aft 40 Mammers could target the intruder. The aircraft released its bomb at 300 yards. Beckton ordered hard left rudder, but the bomb still struck, penetrating the main deck between the stacks and exploding in the after crew quarters. 2 men were killed instantly, and fires erupted near the stored 40 mm ammunition. The seventh attacker was a Val coming from port, flying into an intense wall of fire generated by the portside 20 mm guns. Seaman First Class Robert Carr, operating gun 23, kept his trigger depressed despite his weapon overheating. His relentless firing paid off. The Val's engine burst into flames and it crashed close to the ship on the port side, with burning gasoline splashing onto Laffy's deck and igniting more fires. The eighth attacker caught everyone by surprise. A Nakajima B-5MK torpedo bomber, carrying bombs instead of torpedoes, emerged from smoke created by previous attacks. It was almost directly overhead before anyone noticed it. Calvin Clough, a gunner's mate operating a 40er demi-mount, struggled to track his target swiftly enough as he frantically adjusted his cannon. At 08:42 hours, the Kate aircraft struck Mount 53, an ART 5-inch turret, causing severe damage and initiating a catastrophic sequence of events. The Kate's bomb, weighing 250 kg, detonated upon impact, obliterating the turret and killing Chief Schaffer along with his entire crew. Burning aviation fuel seeped into the lower handling rooms through the shattered turret. igniting ready ammunition and sending live shells careening in random directions across the fan tail. One shell penetrated the deck and exploded within the steering gear room, jamming the rudder at a 26-degree angle to port. As a result, Laffy began spinning uncontrollably at 25 knots. Picket promptly ordered the engines halted, but the ship's momentum caused it to complete another full circle before finally decelerating. The timing of this disaster could not have been worse, as 3 additional aircraft were already preparing their attack runs. The 9th attacker, Naval, approached from starboard. With Mount 53 destroyed and the ship circling, defensive fire was significantly compromised. Despite taking hits from the 40 mm gun, the Vol maintained its course. At the last moment, however, gunfire from the starboard 20 mm severed the aircraft's control cables, causing it to crash into the ocean just yards away, with its bomb exploding underwater and lifting Laffy's stern out of the water. The 10th attacker nearly proved fatal for Laffy. A Judy closing in from astern where Mount 53 could no longer provide cover presented a significant threat. With the rudder jammed and the ship circling slowly, Picket was unable to maneuver into an optimal defensive position. The Judy released its bomb from just 200 yards out, striking the fantail and creating an 8-10-foot hole in the deck, killing 6 men who were manning the after 20 mm guns. Among those who perished was signalman Bill Kelly, who had been working on setting up an emergency steering mechanism when the incident occurred as though 8:45 hours. Within 13 minutes, Laffy endured 2 bomb strikes and 1 kamikaze attack. 6 additional planes were downed near the vessel, yet the assault showed no signs of abating. Radar indicated more aircraft closing in, and Laffy's defensive systems had been severely compromised. Mount 53 was obliterated and the rudder became jammed. 3 separate fires blazed across the ship, ammunition levels were dwindling at several gun mounts, and casualties continued to rise. By this point, 15 crew members had lost their lives and 26 were injured. The 11th attacker signified a critical moment in the battle. Naval approached from Laffy's port side, but this time Laffy wasn't isolated. 4 Marine F-4U Corsairs from Marine Fighter Squadron VMF 214 took off from Yonton Airfield on Okinawa and intercepted Naval just as it initiated its attack run. Captain Robert Klingman's Corsair engaged the Japanese plane at 500 feet, his machine guns tearing apart the aircraft's tail section before it spiraled into the sea. This was the first instance where Laffy didn't need to fend off an attacker alone. However, the Marine fighters couldn't cover every threat. The 12th assailant, a Judy approaching from the starboard side, managed to slip past while the Corsairs were otherwise occupied. This kamikaze wouldn't be deterred. At 1847, the Judy crashed into the aft deckhouse between the stacks. Its bomb penetrated the deck and detonated in the after engine room, causing a blast that ruptured steam lines, flooding the area with superheated vapor reaching temperatures of 600 ZF. Machinist's mate George Logan and 3 other crew members were killed instantly due to the intense heat. The explosion also disabled the aft fire room, reducing the ship's speed to just 12 knots. Chief Machinist's mate George Weiss in the forward engine room felt the impact and immediately knew something was seriously wrong when steam pressure dropped suddenly. Despite working in temperatures over 130 ZF, he and his team struggled to maintain adequate steam pressure for the forward engines. Without speed, Laffy would be vulnerable to attack. They had no choice but to keep the plant operational at all costs. The 13th attacker arrived unexpectedly. A twin-engine Yokosuka PY Francis bomber approached from dead astern at high speed. With Mount 53 destroyed and most of the aft 20 mm guns disabled, Laffy was almost defenseless against attacks from that direction. The Francis continued its approach with the intention to crash into the bridge. At a distance of 200 yards, Lieutenant Richard Kerstetter's Marine Corsair dove in from above, firing a long burst at the Francis' starboard engine. This forced the bomber to veer sharply to the right and narrowly miss Laffy's stern before crashing into the ocean. The 14th aircraft almost succeeded where others had failed. An Oscar fighter approached from the port beam at maximum speed. Moving so fast that gun directors could not effectively track it, the pilot managed to maneuver within range of the ship's defenses only briefly. Mount 51 managed to discharge 3 rounds, all of which missed their targets. The Oscar's pilot attempted to hit the bridge in an effort to disable the ship's command structure. Just as the Oscar was about to strike, gunner's mate second class Robert Fenwick, stationed at a portside 40mm gun mount, scored a lucky hit on the aircraft's tail. This caused the plane to veer left, clipping the ship's mast and severing the port yard arm along with the American flag. The Oscar subsequently crashed into the water near the starboard side of the ship. At Zozo 848, there was a short lull in the action during which no aircraft were visible, although radar indicated more incoming from the north. Beckton seized this opportunity to assess the damage. The situation was dire. Mount 53 had been destroyed with all hands lost. Steering control was compromised following flooding of the engine room. Multiple fires were burning. Casualties numbered 32 dead and over 50 wounded. Ammunition supplies were dwindling on several mounts and additional aircraft were approaching. Lieutenant Frank Manson, the ship's communications officer, inquired if they should prepare to abandon ship. Beckton's response would go down in history. Hell no, Frank. We still have guns that can shoot. I'll never abandon this vessel as long as there is a gun firing. A nearby lookout murmured under his breath, adding an informal coda to the captain's statement. And if I can find one man to fire it. The 15th attacker ended the brief respite. A Val diving bomber was coming in from a great height directly towards the sun, employing the standard tactic used since aerial combat began. The intense sunlight prevented any lookouts from detecting the aircraft until it had already started its descent. The Val dropped its bomb from an altitude of 1,000 feet. Beckton instinctively applied hard right rudder, momentarily forgetting that control was compromised. The bomb landed in the water just 10 yards off to port, causing shrapnel to tear through the ship's hull and injuring 4 more crew members. The 16th attacker was a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, significantly larger than the single-engine aircraft Laffy had encountered previously. This twin-engine bomber approached from the starboard side at 200 feet, too low for the 5-inch guns to engage effectively. Every available 40mm and 20mm gun opened fire on it. Despite being a larger target, the Betty could withstand more damage than its smaller counterparts. Flak rained down upon the bomber's fuselage and wings. One engine caught fire, followed by the other, but the Betty continued to advance. At a distance of 300 yards, the pilot dropped 2 bombs that narrowly missed Laffy on both sides. With the aircraft now fully engulfed in flames, it pressed onward towards the ship. In the final moments, the left wing dipped downward, whether due to mechanical failure or the pilot's demise remained unknown. The Betty flew directly over Mount 52, so close that the gun crew had no choice but to duck for cover. The flaming bomber crashed into the ocean on Laffy's port side, its wreckage skimming across the water like a fiery rock. The 17th attacker managed to achieve what others couldn't. A direct hit on one of Laffy's main gun mounts. An Oscar fighter diving at high speed from ahead released a bomb that struck Mount 52 dead on. Although the explosion didn't penetrate the turret's armor, the shockwave killed 3 crew members and wounded 5 more, including the mount captain. With the turret disabled, Laffy's forward firepower was cut in half. By Zo 8050, the ship was in critical condition. Out of 3 5-inch gun mounts, only Mount 51 was still operational. Half of the 40 MEMI guns were either destroyed or damaged, and most of the 20 MEM weapons were out of commission. Fires raged unchecked after the vessel had slowed to 8 knots and was circling helplessly with a jammed rudder, while radar showed additional aircraft closing in. The 18th attacker should have sealed Laffy's fate. A Val approached from an ideal angle directly astern where there were no defenses left. However, as the Val began its attack run, 2 Marine Corsairs dove down from above. Captain Floyd Kirkpatrick and Lieutenant Robert Cowan engaged the Japanese aircraft in a crossfire. Their combined 2.45 caliber machine guns tore apart the plane. The debris from the Val landed on Laffy's deck due to the close proximity of the kill. The 19th attacker was another HED-3A, Judy approaching from the port quarter. By this point, Laffy's gun crews were fatigued and had been firing non-stop for over 20 minutes. Barrel temperatures were dangerously high, ammunition stocks were dwindling rapidly, and several guns had jammed due to the sustained rate of fire. Despite taking hits, the Judy continued its attack run, pulling up at 100 yards with the intention of crashing into Laffy's bridge from above. A fortunate shot from gun mount 44 hit the wing of an incoming Judy, causing it to roll and crash into the sea near the ship. At 0851 hours, the 20th attacker appeared on the scene. A Val approached from starboard, its pilot having learned valuable lessons from watching his fallen comrades. He flew at unpredictable heights and angles, constantly weaving to confuse the gunners. Despite their efforts, the few operational guns that could engage fired ineffectively due to fatigue and damage. The Val dropped its bomb from 300 yards out, which landed in the water close to the ship, sending more shrapnel into Laffy's already damaged hull. The 21st aircraft nearly succeeded where others had failed. Another Judy, obscured by the smoke billowing from Laffy's fires, approached undetected from Aston. The first indication of its presence was the sound of its engine as it passed overhead at 50 feet. At point-blank range, the Judy released its bomb onto the deck near destroyed Mount 53, penetrating into the aft ammunition handling room and detonating there with devastating force. A chain reaction of explosions followed, causing the stern section to erupt in flames and smoke. Shrapnel tore through the damage control teams, struggling to contain the fires. Among those who perished was Ensign Robert Thompson, who had abandoned his post in the Combat Information Center to lead a repair party. For his sacrifice, he would be awarded the Navy Cross posthumously. The blast also damaged the fire mains, reducing water pressure in the aft section of the vessel. With no water available to combat the flames, damage control teams resorted to manually tossing burning debris overboard. Some crew members wrapped their hands in rags and picked up scorching shell casings, throwing them into the sea. Others used their bodies to smother fires, rolling on the deck to extinguish burning clothing. The 27th and final attacker was a Val approaching from the starboard bow at 0853. By then, Laffy was nearly defenseless. Only Mount 51 and a few automatic weapons were still operational. The ship was immobile and listing heavily to port due to flooding. Commander Beckton observed the incoming Val, realizing his vessel had little left to defend itself with. However, Laffy wasn't alone. 4 Navy FE-SIF Hellcats from Fighter Squadron 10, which had arrived from the carrier Intrepid, intercepted the Val at a distance of 1,000 yards. Lieutenant John Mitchell's Hellcat targeted the Val's engine and fired hundreds of rounds into it. The aircraft caught fire and plunged into the ocean about 500 yards away from Laffy. The attack was over. In just 80 minutes, USS Laffy had endured an intense kamikaze assault with 22 aircraft. 6 kamikazes had crashed into the ship, 4 bombs had struck directly, and it had been repeatedly strafed. Despite this devastation, she somehow remained afloat. 32 men were dead and 71 more were wounded. The ship was a burning, flooding wreck. She had managed to survive. The numbers were astonishing. Out of the 22 attackers, Laffy's guns brought down 8. Marine and Navy fighter jets destroyed another 8, while 6 either crashed into the ship or inflicted bomb damage. No other vessel in history faced such a relentless kamikaze assault and emerged victorious. Statistical analysis indicated that the likelihood of survival was less than 1%. Nevertheless, Laffy overcame these daunting odds through exceptional training, innovative strategies, sheer bravery, and perhaps a bit of luck. Lieutenant Commander Charles Holivac would later scrutinize the attack with meticulous mathematical calculations. The average time between each aircraft's approach was 3 minutes and 38 seconds, ranging from an interval of 8 minutes to just 45 seconds. At its most intense phase, Laffy engaged a new attacker every 90 seconds for almost 15 continuous minutes. an unprecedented feat in naval warfare. Technological advancements played a crucial role as well. Laffy's Mark 37 gun directors, equipped with advanced analog computers, enabled the ship's 5-inch guns to target aircraft with remarkable precision. Proximity-fused shells, which detonated automatically near enemy planes, greatly increased the chances of hitting targets. The Bofors Rapid, firing 14mm guns and explosive ammunition, provided vital mid-range defense. Even the 20mm Harlequins, frequently deemed insufficient by critics, managed to bring down several attackers at close proximity. Yet it wasn't solely due to technology that Laffy endured. The human element proved crucial. Commander Beckton showcased exceptional tactical prowess while steering his damaged vessel. Gunners maintained fire even as their comrades fell around them. Damage control teams battled raging fires with nothing but the bare hands. Engineers sustained critical systems amid infernal conditions. Radar operators tracked numerous targets amidst smoke and chaos, steadfastly performing their duties despite the confusion. Every sailor who remained at his station against all personal instincts to seek safety played a vital role. The attackers were not novice pilots from the Toko Corps of late 1945, but seasoned aviators willing to face death rather than accept defeat. Their tactical coordination, especially in the initial stages, demonstrated an intricate comprehension of American defensive measures. Utilizing smoke and sunlight for cover, launching multidirectional assaults to overwhelm fire control systems, and targeting command centers were just some of their sophisticated tactics that would later be studied and integrated into naval aviation doctrine post-war. The immediate impact was substantial. The loss of Laffy from radar Picket station disrupted the early warning network protecting the invasion fleet. However, her survival conveyed a more profound message. If even a single destroyer could end 22 kamikaze attacks, then Japan's strategy of sacrificing lives to sink American ships was failing. The arithmetic that once seemed favorable to Japan, thousands of aircraft against hundreds of ships, was rendered ineffective by the United States' superior defensive capabilities and damage control expertise. Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner, who commanded amphibious forces during the Okinawa campaign, would later assert that Laffy's survival was the primary factor in sustaining fleet morale when kamikaze attacks were at their peak. Her resilience suggested that any ship could withstand such relentless assaults. The psychological toll on American sailors who dreaded radar picket duty as a death sentence was profound. Similarly, the Japanese response was telling. Intercepted radio communications indicated that the failure to sink Laffy despite the unprecedented number of attackers caused significant morale issues among kamikaze pilots. If 22 aircraft couldn't destroy a single destroyer, how many would be needed to sink a battleship or an aircraft carrier? The rationale behind the 1-to-1 ratio of kamikaze tactics was discredited. Vice Admiral Yugaki, upon reviewing the after-action reports, understood the implications. On April 16th, he wrote in his diary, "Despite the valiant sacrifices of our special attack warriors, the enemy destroyer survived." He concluded, "This demonstrates the limitations of body crash tactics against well-defended targets. We must reassess our approach." Within weeks, Japanese strategies shifted to targeting transport and supply vessels instead of heavily armored warships, acknowledging that the kamikaze strategy had reached its limits. The technological insights were swiftly integrated into American naval design. The Allen M. Sumner-class destroyers like Laffy, with their twin 5-inch mounts and robust anti-aircraft armaments, set a new standard for post-war destroyer construction. The efficacy of proximity fused ammunition was conclusively demonstrated, as was the importance of redundant damage control systems. Major navies around the world analyzed Laffy's actions and incorporated these lessons into their doctrines. Perhaps the most critical lesson was human in nature. In an era marked by technological advancements like mechanical computers and radar systems which were transforming warfare, the survival of USS Laffy underscored that the human factor remained paramount. Training, leadership, courage, and determination could still triumph over seemingly insurmountable odds. These qualities, which had enabled wooden ships to defeat ironclads and allowed David to vanquish Goliath, continued to hold significance in an age defined by radar and guided weapons. The repair figures spoke volumes about the extent of Laffy's battle injuries. The ship spent 4 months in dry dock undergoing extensive repairs to the damage it sustained. Over 300 tons of damaged steel were removed and replaced, essentially reconstructing the entire rear section of the vessel. The cost of these repairs surpassed $3 million, which is more than 1/3 of the original construction price. However, the Navy viewed this expenditure as a worthwhile investment given Laffy's resilience in surviving extreme punishment. The human toll was significant yet manageable. Out of a crew of 336, 32 lost their lives, accounting for slightly less than 10% casualty rate, despite being struck by 6 kamikazes and 4 bombs. Several factors contributed to the ship's survival. Chief among them were Becton's rigorous damage control training, the crew's combat experience from previous operations, and the superior design of the Allen M. Sum class, which featured improved armor and compartmentalization compared to earlier destroyers. Matthew Darnell and his medical team played a crucial role in saving lives under intense conditions, performing surgeries even as bombs exploded nearby. Numerous acts of individual heroism were recorded but could not be fully documented due to their sheer number. For instance, Gunner's mate Lawrence Dowski stayed at his post on Mount 51 despite suffering shrapnel wounds and claimed responsibility for shooting down 3 out of the 8 aircraft that were destroyed. Machinist's mate George Wise kept the forward engines operational in extreme heat so intense it peeled paint off bulkheads. Quartermaster Ari Futrides meticulously maintained the ship's log during the entire battle, ensuring a detailed account for future historical analysis. Seaman Calvin Clough manned a 14mm gun after its crew was killed and managed to down 1 attacker before being wounded himself. Lieutenant T. Bu Runk's story deserves special recognition as damage control officer. He faced some of the most perilous conditions during the attack, making crucial decisions that likely saved Laffy from further destruction. While navigating through the damaged ship to evaluate the extent of the destruction, he stumbled upon a non-detonated 250 kg bomb lying on deck. Rank promptly picked up the weapon and tossed it into the ocean without any delay. Moments later, as the bomb exploded just off the side of the vessel, shrapnel from the blast rained down onto the ship's hull. If it had detonated aboard, it could have caused catastrophic damage. At Radar Picket Station No. 1, additional ships played vital roles in supporting Laffy during this critical time. Lieutenant Howell Charing commanded LC Cecil 51, which successfully shot down 6 enemy aircraft and was later awarded a Presidential Unit Citation for its efforts. The ship's gunfire support proved crucial when Laffy's own guns were rendered ineffective, contributing significantly to the destroyer's survival. Meanwhile, LCSL 116 swiftly rescued 22 sailors from Laffy who had been blown overboard during the attack. Many of them suffered severe burns. Without their timely intervention, the casualty count would likely have been much higher. The arrival of fighter pilots at a crucial juncture also deserves mention. Marine Captain Floyd Kirkpatrick and Navy Lieutenant John Mitchell each claimed multiple aerial victories, 3 and 2 respectively, which helped safeguard Laffy when its defenses were nearly depleted. Initially, the lack of continuous fighter cover for radar Picket destroyers had been problematic. The Japanese fighters effectively decoyed away the intended defensive measures, leading to significant losses. This failure prompted a re-evaluation of tactics, ensuring that similar situations would not recur by maintaining constant fighter escort coverage in future operations. The broader strategic implications were substantial. Operation Kikusui involved deploying over 300 aircraft on April 16th for coordinated attacks. However, the high attrition rate, losing 22 aircraft to inflict only moderate damage on a single destroyer, highlighted an unsustainable exchange ratio, with approximately 3,000 operational aircraft remaining in Japan's arsenal at that time. Continuing this pattern of engagement would deplete their air power well before achieving any decisive impact against the Allied invasion fleet. The equation presented by mathematics was incomprehensible. In response, the United States acted promptly and resolutely. Admiral Chester Nimitz, after reviewing Laffy's report, instructed immediate modifications to radar Picket protocols. From then on, destroyers would operate in coordinated groups rather than individually. Continuous and layered fighter cover would be provided, along with emergency repair vessels stationed nearer to Picket stations. These adjustments were swiftly implemented and significantly reduced losses during subsequent Kikusui operations. The Japanese also drew conclusions from these events, albeit predominantly negative ones. Focusing attacks on a single ship had not yielded the desired results while depleting valuable pilots and aircraft. Future endeavors would involve more dispersed tactics, targeting multiple objectives simultaneously to prevent concentrated defensive fire. However, this dispersal strategy also diminished the likelihood of inflicting decisive damage on any individual target. It created a tactical dilemma with no clear resolution. Admiral Simu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, later acknowledged that the inability to sink Laff represented a pivotal shift in Japanese naval strategy. Kamikaze attacks had been Japan's final chance to inflict sufficient damage to deter American invasion plans for Operation Downfall. If even maximum effort could not destroy a single destroyer, there was little hope of halting the massive invasion fleet assembled for the operation. The atomic bombs that concluded the war 4 months later merely served as a punctuation mark on an outcome already apparent. The long-term influence on naval warfare doctrine was profound. This incident conclusively demonstrated that surface ships could withstand mass air assaults if adequately equipped and trained. This realization would shape Cold War-era naval construction, with ships designed around integrated air defense systems. The Aegis combat system, capable of tracking and engaging multiple targets simultaneously, is a direct descendant of the lessons learned off Okinawa. The focus on point defense systems and damage control in contemporary warships can be traced back to Laffy's valiant battle. The enduring legacy of human resilience is also reflected in the dedication of Laffy's crew, who maintained one of the longest-standing veteran associations in naval history for over 6 decades. Their slogan, "We Who Survived," encapsulated both their physical survival and the psychological toll of witnessing such an attack and emerging alive. Many former crew members endured symptoms similar to what would later be recognized as post-traumatic stress disorder, though this diagnosis did not exist in 1945. The Navy's current comprehension of combat-related stress and its treatment is largely indebted to studies conducted on survivors like those aboard Laffy. Commander Beckton eventually rose to the rank of Rear Admiral, and his tactical strategies during the Kamikaze assault were extensively analyzed at naval war colleges around the world. His memoir, titled The Ship That Would Not Die, became mandatory reading at Annapolis, yet Beckton consistently attributed credit to his crew members. In a 1975 interview, he remarked, "I issued the commands, but those young men carried them out. They are the ones who saved the ship." Any commander would feel honored to have such dedicated sailors under their command. Laffy continued her service for another 3 decades, taking part in both the Korean War and Cold War operations before being decommissioned in 1975. Unlike most retired destroyers that ended up as scrap or targets for practice, Laffy was preserved as a memorial. Since 1982, she has been moored at Patriots Point Naval Museum in South Carolina, where visitors can walk her decks and view the battle damage still visible on her hull. The aft 5-inch gun Mount 53, remains unrepaired, serving as a permanent tribute to the 6 men who lost their lives there. Modern naval historians continue to puzzle over how Laffy managed to survive when statistical odds suggested otherwise. Some attribute her survival to divine intervention due to its mathematical improbability, while others argue that a combination of minor advantages, superior training, innovative tactics, and technological superiority collectively created an unlikely yet not impossible outcome. the truth likely falls somewhere between these perspectives. Throughout history, warfare has been a domain where meticulous planning collides with unpredictable chaos, where human determination meets mechanical odds. There is no denying the bravery exhibited on that day. Japanese pilots who chose death over surrender, American sailors who remained steadfast against overwhelming forces, and young men from both sides who believed their cause was worthy of their lives. The sorrow of war lies in how this courage leads to mutual devastation rather than creation. Yet it teaches us that such bravery can be found within ordinary individuals facing extraordinary situations. On the pre-dawn morning of April 16, 1945, USS Laffy was just another destroyer performing radar picket duty. By noon, she had become a legend, known as the ship that would not die, and renowned for surviving an onslaught from 22 Kamikaze attacks. Her tale has inspired generations of sailors, demonstrating that with sufficient courage, training, and resolve, even the impossible can be achieved. The last entry in Laffy's deck log for April 16th, penned by Quartermaster Futrides as the ship limped towards Kurumato for emergency repairs, was notably restrained. It read, "Sustained multiple enemy air attacks, ship damaged but operational, proceeding to base." Behind these concise words lay 80 minutes of intense combat, 32 fallen comrades, and a story of survival that reverberated through naval history. The war would conclude in 4 months, with kamikaze attacks continuing to claim many ships and lives before Japan's surrender. But never again would a single ship endure such concentrated assault nor witness the tactical coordination of Japanese forces, and never again would victory be uncertain. Laffy had demonstrated that American vessels could withstand the worst the enemy could offer and still survive. By demonstrating this point, she played a crucial role in winning the conflict. To this day, the teachings from USS Laffy remain pertinent. In an era characterized by missile warfare and cyber threats, when military strategists discuss potential catastrophic strikes capable of neutralizing key adversaries, Laffy serves as a testament to the enduring truth that wars are still won through human effort rather than solely relying on technological superiority. It underscores the importance of training and readiness in overcoming numerical disadvantages and highlights how courage and resolve can prevail against overwhelming odds. Sometimes, despite all predictions and probabilities, ships deemed incapable of survival manage to defy expectations. The statistical aspects of warfare do not dictate an inevitable outcome, they merely represent challenges to be surmounted.